All right, let's dive in. Today, we're taking a deep dive into something pretty wild. We're talking about the line. Have you heard about
Oh yeah,
this?
the line. It's quite the project.
Yeah, so for those who haven't, picture this. A city built in a single straight line. Not a grid, not a circle, but a line stretching over 100 miles across the Saudi Arabian desert. It's part of this whole NEOM thing they've got going on over there.
NEOM is ambitious in itself, but the line, that's ambition on another level.
Right. It's like they took a skyscraper and just laid it on its side.
A skyscraper, 170 kilometers long, 500 meters tall.
500 meters, that's what, like over 1,500 feet tall?
Yeah, and just 200 meters wide.
Yeah.
And they're planning to cram 9 million people in there.
It's kind of hard to wrap your head around,
I think that's the point, isn't it? It's meant to be this sort of mind-blowing, futuristic vision,
A zero carbon, car-free utopia.
powered entirely by renewable energy. At least that's the idea.
But the big question is, can they actually pull it off? I mean, we've seen ambitious projects before, but this seems like a whole different beast.
Oh, it is. It definitely is. Just from an engineering standpoint, the challenges are almost unimaginable.
Like, where do you even begin?
Well, I mean, think about the foundation for a second. We're not talking about a typical skyscraper here. We're talking about a structure that stretches for 170 kilometers across a variety of terrain. You've got desert, you've got mountains, you've even got coastal areas.
That was one of the first things I thought of when I was looking into this. How do you build a foundation that can handle that kind of load over such a long distance?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question. And then on top of that, you have to consider wind loads. You know how skyscrapers sway in the wind.
Right, and the taller they are, the more they sway.
Exactly. Now imagine a structure that's not just incredibly tall, but also incredibly long and thin. The wind forces at 500 meters would be absolutely immense.
I can only imagine.
It'd be several times greater than what the Burj Khalifa experiences, probably.
Right.
So how do you design a structure that can withstand those forces without, snapping in half?
Okay, so we've got these massive engineering challenges, but then you also have the logistical hurdles. Just thinking about the sheer quantity of materials they'll need.
Oh yeah, we're talking about a mind-boggling amount of steel, glass, and concrete.
And that's not even considering the environmental impact of producing all that material.
You're hitting on a crucial point. The carbon footprint of something like this would be huge. And then there's the question of transportation. How do you get all that material to the construction site?
Yeah, it's not like you can just pop down to the local Home Depot for this kind of project.
No, it would require a massive, globally coordinated effort. And all that comes with its own set of environmental concerns, disrupting ecosystems, the whole 9 yards.
Right. And all this before we even get to what it would actually be like to live in this thing.
There's a lot to unpack there, too.
There is, but before we go there, there's one more thing about the design that really caught my eye. The mirrored exterior.
Mirrored exterior.
Yeah, they're talking about covering this entire structure in mirrors. I mean, I get it. It looked pretty futuristic, shimmering out there in the desert. But I can't help but think about the impact on wildlife.
Oh, absolutely. That's a valid concern.
Especially birds.
Birds, yeah. You've seen what happens with those massive solar farms, right? The ones in the Mojave Desert.
They have to implement all sorts of mitigation measures because the reflective panels were essentially frying birds in midair.
Right, and those are just flat panels on the ground.
Yeah.
Now imagine a giant mirrored wall cutting through the sky. It'd be a death trap for birds.
So even if they figure out how to build this thing, they've got a whole other set of ecological hurdles to clear.
Yeah, it's like this clash between this futuristic vision and, well, the reality of nature.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of reality, maybe we should shift gears for a minute and talk about what it would actually be like to live inside the line.
All right, let's get into that. So, life in the line, huh? They're pitching it as this incredibly convenient, efficient way of living.
Yeah, everything within a 5-minute walk. Parks, schools, shops, restaurants. All right there.
All seamlessly connected, no cars, no streets.
It sounds almost too good to be true, doesn't it? Like, I get the appeal, but I don't know, it also makes me a little uneasy.
Uneasy how?
Well, it just feels a bit artificial. Like, can you really create a genuine sense of community in a place that's so manufactured?
That's an interesting point. It's like those biodome experiments they did back in the 90s. Remember those?
Oh yeah, they were trying to create these self-sustaining ecosystems, but they all like fell apart eventually.
Exactly. They couldn't replicate the complexity of a natural ecosystem. And I think there's a parallel there with the line.
Like they can talk about sustainability all they want, but it's a different kind of sustainability than what you find in nature.
Right. Nature is messy, it's chaotic, it's constantly adapting and evolving. The line, on the other hand, is all about control, about imposing order.
Yeah, and what happens when things go wrong? I mean, systems fail, right? What happens when the power goes out in the line?
Good question. What about the human element? We're social creatures. We need interaction. We need a sense of belonging. Can you really create that in a pre-planned environment like this?
That's what I keep coming back to. It's like cities, they evolve organically. They have a kind of energy that you can't just manufacture.
Right, it's that unpredictable, messy element that makes cities so vibrant. The line feels more like, I don't know, a futuristic shopping mall than a real city.
Yeah, a very exclusive, high-tech shopping mall.
Exactly. And that brings us to the financial side of
Oh,
things.
yeah, the money. This whole NEOM project is estimated to cost, what, hundreds of billions of dollars?
Possibly even trillions in the long run.
Can Saudi Arabia really afford to bankroll something this massive? I mean, even with all their oil wealth, that's a huge gamble.
It is a gamble. And mega projects like this have a history of, well, not going according to plan.
Oh, yeah, you look at projects like the Boston Big Dig or that airport they built in Berlin, and you see how easily things can spiral out of control.
Budgets explode, deadlines get pushed back, and sometimes the final product ends up being a shadow of what was promised.
And the line is, like, exponentially more complex than any of those projects.
You're not wrong. And then there are the political implications to consider.
Right. Saudi Arabia's human rights record is not great, to put it mildly.
And this whole NEOM project, some people see it as an attempt to kind of distract from that, to present this image of a progressive, forward-thinking nation.
So it's not just an engineering project or an urban planning project, it's also a PR project.
Yeah, for sure. And the success or failure of the line, it could have a big impact on Saudi Arabia's image on the world stage.
So we're not just talking about building a city here. We're talking about a massive experiment, a high-stakes gamble with implications that go way beyond Saudi Arabia.
Absolutely. And that kind of brings us back to our original question, doesn't it? Is the line even possible?
I mean, technically maybe, but at what cost? And even if they do manage to pull it off, is this really the kind of future we want?
It's a question worth asking.
It's amazing, really. We've just spent, what, like an hour talking about this thing, and I feel like we've barely scratched the surface.
Oh, there's so much more to it. We could probably spend a whole week talking about the line and still not cover everything.
But even just from what we've discussed, it's clear that this project raises some really profound questions.
Big questions about the future of cities, about our relationship with the environment.
It's about what it means to be human in this increasingly technological world.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you've got these mind-boggling engineering challenges, you've got the potential environmental impact, you've got the whole question of whether people can actually thrive in an environment like that.
That's a lot to wrap your head around.
And yet there's something about the line that's just so captivating. It's like it forces you to confront these big questions, you know?
I think that's part of the appeal. It's provocative. It's pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible.
We've talked about the technical hurdles, the potential ecological pitfalls, the financial risks. But for me, it all comes down to this one question. Is it worth it?
Ah, the million-dollar question.
Even if they can overcome all the challenges, even if they can somehow mitigate the environmental impact, is the line truly a desirable future?
Or are we, sacrificing something fundamental in pursuit of this technological utopia?
Right, like the line promises efficiency, it promises convenience, it promises a sustainable way of life, but it also represents a radical departure from, well, from how humans have lived for, all of history.
It's like we're trading the messy, chaotic beauty of organic cities for this highly controlled, hyper-efficient environment. I'm not sure that's a trade-off I'm comfortable with.
Me neither. It's like, where's the room for spontaneity? Where's the sense of community? Where's that connection to nature that, that makes us feel human?
Those are things you can't engineer. Those are things that emerge organically.
Exactly. And that's what makes the line such a fascinating case study. It's not just about the technology or the architecture. It's a reflection of our values,
Our priorities, our vision for the future.
What do we value more? Efficiency and control, or human connection, social interaction, a balanced relationship with the natural world.
It's a question we all need to be asking ourselves, not just about the line, but about all the technological advancements that are shaping our world.
Yeah, I think you're right. Because whether the line ultimately succeeds or fails, it's a reminder that the future isn't set in stone. It's something we're creating every day through our choices, through our actions. And that's a pretty powerful thought to end on, don't you think?
I couldn't agree more.
Well, folks, that's our deep dive into the line. Hope you found it as thought-provoking as we did.
Thanks for listening.